Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of VetFolio Voice, where I was joined by Dr. Lyla Proença to talk about so many things. We talked about her brainchild, her creation, Vetahead, and the inspiration behind its formation. We talked about the importance of access to knowledge for all veterinary professionals and access to care for all species. We covered the importance of critical thinking when it comes to managing some of the more exotic or non-dog and cat species. And we talked about the importance of recognizing and preserving the human-animal bond with species beyond our typical companion animals, dogs, cats, and horses. Lyla is just great conversation. I feel like I probably could have sat there for another hour and talked to her and not even realized the time had passed. And a lot of what she said really spoke to me. Speaking just from my own perspective, I love all creatures great and small, and I have a huge interest in developing the knowledge and the ability to treat multiple species. But, I'll certainly admit I experience that apprehension and fear associated with managing a species I'm less familiar with. Feeling like there's someone like Lyla in my corner to offer support and encouragement and make me feel like I have the knowledge and I have the capability to make good decisions for my patients is incredibly empowering and makes me feel more willing and more capable of trying something new. If you can relate to that, then let me tell you, this is the conversation for you. And be sure to check out Vetahead. There are so many accessible, easy to understand resources that help you learn something new and empower you to feel confident in your medical decisions when, maybe venturing a little outside of your comfort zone. A native of Brazil, Dr. Lyla Proença is the founder and CEO of Vetahead, which offers online exotic animal medicine courses. Dr. Proença has always been passionate about veterinary medicine. She obtained her Brazilian veterinary medical degree in 2004 in Brazil. In 2007, she completed her master's degree in biological science from the University of Brasilia, where she worked with free-ranging maned wolves and crab-eating foxes. In 2010, she received her PhD degree in veterinary sciences from São Paulo State University, where she worked with crustacean birds. In Brazil, Dr. Proença owned a private practice working exclusively with zoological companion animals. She earned her American DVM degree in 2011 and completed her residency in zoological medicine at the University of Georgia, where she developed a special interest for ZooMed endoscopy and minimally invasive techniques. She also collaborated on several publications, including one focused on novel techniques in endosurgery. She's the first South American to become a diplomate of the American College of Zoological Medicine, with an emphasis on zoological companion animals. She was the co-author of the 2015 Exotic Endoscopy issue of Veterinary Clinics of North America. Dr. Proença actively participates in the zoological medicine community, teaching many national and international lectures, courses, master classes, and wet labs, including endoscopy courses. Such an interesting conversationalist. Let's go ahead and get into our episode.
Looking to protect your canine patients against parasites? Look no further than Simparica Trio, Serolaner, Moxidectin, and Pyrantel chewable tablets. The first chewable to offer triple protection from heartworm disease, ticks and fleas, and roundworms and hookworms. It's also FDA approved to block infections that may cause Lyme disease by killing deer ticks.
Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures. Serolaner belongs to the isoxazoline class, which has been associated with neurologic adverse reactions. The most common side effects were vomiting and diarrhea.
Visit SimparicaTrioDVM.com for full prescribing information.
All right, in this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Lyla Proença, and we're going to talk about so many things. There's a focus here on exotics and zoo medicine, but I feel like we have so many topics we want to cover. So thank you for joining me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here. Yes, definitely conversations go off in directions that we don't expect.
That's the fun part about doing this job.
Agreed.
So let's start off with just tell us about yourself.
So I'm a veterinarian. I was born and raised in Brazil, and I came to the U.S. I was about 30 years old. And when I came here, I was no longer a vet. I had to go through the validation of my diploma, even though I was already a vet for almost 10 years. And that was a interesting experience to going back to the basics of veterinary medicine. I had already been working with ZooMed or exotic animals for over 10 years. So I totally forgot my, large animal medicine and whatnot. So I came here, then started a residency, became a specialist on zoological medicine. Is also the same as saying exotic animal medicine. And then throughout working in the United States, another passion of mine is teaching. So I work a lot on speaking, public speaking in conferences. And then that kept coming back, an experience I was having at work. At the time, I was working in the corporate environment and with a position as a director and in a lot of board meetings and meetings in general. And that, theme kept coming back about being a good communicator and the gaps in veterinary medicine that we have and not learning about exotic animals during vet school and the technicians and all of that. At one point, they all came together and I decided to start my own company called Vetahead. And that has been such a fun journey to, be leading this startup, a great team, being able to put together all my values, which they seem so far and fetched away, but somehow they all came together. And yeah, it has been a great journey on teaching, and I love it. And I love the interaction with many people in the world. That's one good thing that internet brings us, right? So we can be in touch with the entire world and know of different realities. And yeah, that's a nutshell. I'm also a mom. I have two children, two teenagers. So like a roller coaster at home. I'm a single mom and we practically have a zoo at home. So a pet mom as well. And I think in a nutshell, that's me.
I love that you add in all of those parts. You're, becoming a vet here in the United States. I'd love to hear more about what that process involved for you of
Mhm.
getting validated here in the United States, because, yeah, that had to have been, on the one, like, I don't know, frustrating in some aspects and,
Mhm.
maybe a little intimidating on the other hand, because I know if somebody asked me to go back and do,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're being very kind, to say a little.
Well, I'm just thinking to go back, like you said, you've been working with zoo and exotics, and to go back
Yes.
and say, okay, what's the most common cause of this
Yeah.
in a horse? And you're like, what could have told you 10 years ago?
Oh my God, Cassie, I kid you not. I came and I was convinced I was gonna open a bakery because I was said there's no way I'm gonna go through this process. I'm not joking. I had a business plan. I was like, I'm not gonna do this again. I can't do this again. Because at the time, also it was all paper. Like there was no the process now I think is way faster because a lot of things is now electronic. But at the time you had to
Oh my
mail your
goodness.
application and it was like a 1 to 2 year process, very
Oh my
expensive.
gosh.
And not to
Yeah.
mention, like, I was like, I don't know anymore. Cassie, I had to palpate a cow in five
Oh
minutes,
my
say if it was pregnant
goodness.
or not, and give 3 reasons. I'm like, there's no way I can do that.
What? Oh my gosh. After you've been doing, oh my
Nightmare.
gosh. Yeah,
Yes.
that sounds, oh my
So I was
gosh.
like, I'm gonna open a bakery. That's
Yeah.
fine. I love
I'm not
bakeries.
gonna
And
lie,
in
there's
a
still
friend,
days when I think about that and I'm like, I'm gonna go just like be a barista or something. And because, they brighten my day. And if the worst thing I do
oh
is,
my God, Cassie.
mess up somebody's coffee order and nothing dies, then okay. And I don't want to take anything away from baristas or bakers because they are so important, but there are days.
I know. And I will tell you oh my God, so on point. Today's one of those days, okay, for me.
Oh no.
And off the mic, we can talk about it, but it is like that, right? We do feel like that. And I feel like with Vetahead, for example, and I know we're going to talk more about it, but it is so less stressful because nobody dies. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yep.
The max I can do is mess up, and perhaps you're not gonna be able to, like, the worst case scenario, internet comes out and you can't access the courses, but nobody dies. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's no the majority of the things dealing with clients, like I can't access this, I can't open that. It's like it's so and so when my team comes to me with these problems, they're like, guys, this is nothing,
This is
put in
fine.
perspective. It's
Yeah.
gonna be fine. And they're like, I made this mistake and this happened and I sent this email wrong. I'm like, that's okay. Send another email saying I'm
Mhm.
sorry. And life continues. You are so right. I think I know this is cheesy to say, but I really think we underrate the amount of decisions one has to make as a veterinarian, as a technician. And I will put a little other cherry on the top. As a single mom, as an entrepreneur, the amount of very serious decisions I need to make every single day is overwhelming for any human being.
I
So,
can relate to
yeah,
that
I'm with
so
you.
much. I also own a house call practice, and and I practice in a hospital setting, and then, yeah, I do this job, which is nice because nothing is dying. I also
Yeah.
have two kids, and I remember my husband asked me what I wanted to have for dinner the other night, and I almost cried because I was like, I cannot make that decision. I don't know.
It is very real.
Well, let's talk Vetahead too. You've mentioned it. I have definitely been on the site. It is very cool and very
Hmm.
necessary.
Thank
I
you.
was on a forum the other day and people were singing its praises, rightfully so. So tell us
Oh,
about.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's out there. People know about it and are excited about it. So let's get it
Nice.
out there more. Tell us
Yeah.
more about it.
You know what's interesting? I was sitting in this very chair. I know the listeners can't see it, but it's a blue chair, like comfy, velvety chair. And this is the only thing, by the way, for all the strong women out there that I took out of my marriage. I came with my clothes and this chair.
Oh my
And the
goodness.
reason I brought this chair is because it's the very chair where I started Vetahead.
Oh,
So I was sitting on this chair when I called the attorney service to register Vetahead. Um, because it is so I'm so glad to hear that. So Vetahead, I will say it's actually not a company, it's a movement. And it really became a movement with we call them Vetaheaders. Like actually they self-call them Vetaheaders, and I just took that and then I
I
used
love
it.
it.
The people in our community, and it's really, I know we provide a service, and I know it's capitalism, and I know it's a transaction, but at the end of the day, we really created around us. And I think it's because, as we were discussing before, we were really not afraid to tie all the other values we have as humans to vet ahead. One could say it's not good for business, and you might have people steer away from it because we are very vocal when it comes to all things human, right? We say, and even in our policy, if you go on the website, terms and conditions and disclaimer, it says basically, if you're not nice, we have the right to just cut you, like
And it
even if you're
should,
paying
and it
member.
should. There is no room for people for
Yeah.
that.
And on social media too, like we very rarely, I think I can count in one hand like how many haters we had. And I go there and I say, listen, this is not a space for you. And it's all there. Like, we don't like shy away. And we also don't do business with people that are not nice humans. So
Yes.
even if in that great business opportunities sometimes, and it's not the values are not that we do it. And I understand that brings negative too because we're not doing business, right?
No, but I think you're breaking down, like you said, like your core values, and we
Yeah.
know that burnout can come from doing something that is misaligned with what you value and what's important to you. So I think that's really important in any business, whether it's vet ahead or it's a practice setting or whatever or a side hustle, whatever it is that you're doing, to have it
Oh my
align
God,
with your
Cass,
core values.
I don't know what happened if you were here this morning, but this is literally what's happening to me right now. It's like something big in my life is misaligned with my values, professionally speaking. It's in and it's just you just said everything.
Aw,
But
we just needed to have this conversation today.
yeah, but this is again, and it brings me back to the why, right? The vet ahead why, and literally going through all of this morning, I was able to sit down and think, what is my why? Right. And all of this happening, serious things that involve finances and all. And I go back and I like, what is my why? What is my purpose? What is Fed Ahead purpose? And it really helps. Even if you don't have a company, I will encourage you to write your three core values and kind of your human mission. Because in moments like this that you get desperation, you get overwhelmed and you get burnout and you can't make decisions, going back to your why really helps you steer the next steps. I still don't know how I'm gonna solve this, but I know that what is gonna guide me to it, and it was in a moment like this that I created Vet Ahead. It was in a moment where my professional values were misaligning with where I was, and to the point that it was affecting human relations and patients. And I was like, okay, this is really not good for my soul. And I didn't know how to put together all the good things I knew to do, what I'm good at. And I start thinking like what I'm good at, what do people come for me for advice? Sometimes it's hard to figure out what you're good at and how you can capitalize that, right? And when I say capitalize, I'm not saying taking advantage of people, but like how to make these your bread and butter, right? Your
Absolutely. It's
income.
something you're good at, something you enjoy.
It was
Like,
hard for
yeah.
me because at the same time that I'm a very unique professional, there are about less than 300 ACCM specialists in the world. I'm the only South American, to my knowledge. And even though that sounds super special, on the other hand, how do you fit? Because if you're that unique, perhaps the niche is so small that you don't know where to go, how, like even for job. And actually, throughout my career, very common trend was to make my own opportunities. And not because I'm a brilliant, awesome person, it's because I didn't have the opportunities didn't exist. So if I wanted to stay with them, I had to create my own space. And that has been a trend. And right now, Cass, is so random that we're having this conversation because I'm having again to pivot and create my own space again on things that don't exist, and they're gonna come to fruition now and are gonna come through me. And it's so fascinating you saying this about Vetahead. Vetahead did not exist a few years ago, and now there are people that I don't even know talking about it.
Yes, there
And it came
are.
all from my brain. So for everybody out there, your brain is a powerful tool. And if you're working really hard and exhausting your brain is not going to brain for you. You need moments that for your brain to brain well, and you can have ideas and you can put them in, emotion. So all of that to answer your question, what is Vetahead? So Vetahead is pretty much putting together all my values as all my values as a professional, is basically filling up a gap we have in the market where, as veterinarians, technicians, nurses, we go through all our schools and we don't learn about ZooMed or exotic animal. Or if we do, it's very minimal. It definitely does not prepare us to go out there and be adults. And on the other
Sure.
hand, there are the clients, which represent 20-30% of the market, depending where you are in the world. And it is a strong market growing, especially after COVID, with space restrictions and people being at home, they need smaller pets. And so it's booming. And these clients, they don't have where to go. They have these pets and they don't have a professional. And on the other hand, we have the professionals that have the passion. I will say about 40% of us want to do ZooMed or exotic animal in some shape or form. Some of us, we want to do it all the time. Majority of us are general practitioners that want to see dogs and cats as well as other species. And they don't know where to go. And there's a lot of fear involved because we don't want to hurt our patients. So Vetahead came to put two and two together. So we basically create a space where veterinarians and technicians and nurses can learn those things online and can feel confident and empowered to create their own future, to create their own strategy and their own practice, and then they can see the clients. So I feel like it's my journey and my mission to not only empower the veterinarians and the veterinary professionals like technicians, but also to save all these animals. And I can save so many more animals by teaching other veterinarians and other technicians. So there's a space where you can go and learn everything ZooMed online directly from specialists, but broken down for general practitioners and technicians. So it's reliable information, very summarized to what you need, no more than what you need, no less than what you need, and all in one place. Because if you ever tried to find a dose of something for a rabbit or for a bird, it takes about half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that so much from, I worked at the University of Florida before I went to vet school. And in our small animal ICU, we would frequently have zoomed exotic patients. And I remember talking to our residents so many times, and they were like, yeah, it's just not published on this species. So we kind of have to extrapolate and hope. So, yes, if they were struggling to find the doses, which of course this was more years ago than I'm going to say on here, but I'm sure more doses exist.
But it
now.
hasn't changed much, unfortunately,
Sure.
Cassie. Hasn't really, like, the amount of information has changed, but not the ease to find it. Like, it's really, and it goes back to another core value, right? Privilege. and equality. Like if you spend 5 minutes with me, the topic equality on gender or race will pop up. My kids are Black. I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman. And again, throughout those lenses, I could see how privileged I was to have access to that information, to be able to do a residency. And I saw that that information is nowhere near of being accessible to everybody. It's really not, even in the United States. And not to mention, like, we have a lot of followers from India, from
Sure.
Iraq, Iran. Like, we have a scholarship that we give every year. And some of the recipients, like, they are the first women to go to school, period.
Oh my goodness.
And then you look, there's no way that that person is going to be looking at all scientific journals for information. There's just no
Right.
way. And it costs so much. Like in Brazil, a book that I pay, let's say the exotic animal formulary, very accessible to everybody, is like $80, $70, right? In
Right.
Brazil, it's like 1,000 of our money because the exchange current, and that's what I think a lot
Oh
of
my
Americans
goodness.
don't take in consideration is the currency exchange. It's crazy, right? So the dollar,
Wow.
so yeah, so not even like access to see doses and how you're gonna practice, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
I'm so glad that you bring that up because I think you do have, just very insightful in that regard and there's so many topics that, we think privilege equality, things like that, and we can have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation, but when you talk about things like the first woman to even go to school
Yeah,
and
how
having
powerful that
access to
is.
things that yeah, like I honestly, it's funny you bring up the exotic animal formulary. I just ordered it myself the
Yeah,
other day off of Amazon. And yes, I
yeah.
can't remember how much it was, but it was not very expensive. And to think of that being like
Hmm.
borderline inaccessible.
Well, Paraguay, for example, doesn't have Amazon, so you couldn't
Well,
order.
and there you go. So it wouldn't even be able to
Yeah.
do it. Things that we don't even think of in terms
Hmm.
of what we have easy
Hmm.
access to here in the US.
Yeah, and it's important to say too, when we talk about privilege, it doesn't mean that we don't work hard, right? It
Yeah.
just means that we have opportunities. So we all born the same, but we don't have the same opportunities. And that's what privilege is to have opportunities and choices, right?
Oh
Choice
my
is not
goodness.
something available to everybody.
You're so right. And we could go, oh, we could
Yeah.
go so far through that conversation. There's so much to say there.
But then bringing back to ZooMed, not all
Yes.
animals are seen equal. And that's a
So
problem. And that's one of our core things,
yeah, so now
right?
I think you've covered two core values so you talked about making ZooMed accessible, and that was where you were
Yes.
talking about knowledge is a privilege and
Mm-hmm.
things. So that was one of the core values. And then you also have another one, no species left behind. So like you said, not,
Yeah.
we're not seeing all these animals, they're not all getting equal access to medical care. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
And I think, Cassie, there's a lot of us as humans, and I include myself in all of this. Everything that I'm saying is because I felt, I went through, and I had to deconstruct that idea in my mind, breaking down and like rethink how I think, right? But we have a tendency as humans, and then we definitely show that through human behavior to our clients and even the way we think in our teams. And we have positions of leadership, no matter if you are associate veterinarian, you are a leader in your practice. And it boils down to we don't think that an animal that is not a dog or cat, it's lovable and deserves the same amount of love and can be loved to the same level a dog and a cat can. So, in other words, we don't believe that the animal human bond can be constructed with an animal that doesn't look like a dog or a cat. So,
Oh
we are pretty
man.
much saying if you look different, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use the word exotic, because we are not
Sure.
exotics, we are the same. And
Sure.
the vast majority of clients I see, they are adults. They're not children. They're not the
Mhm.
parents of a child with a pet.
Mhm.
They are the adults that chose to have that pet. And there are so many circumstances where is 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 heartbreaking. Like I had a client that, was the wife that brought a pigeon that you found on the streets, and the pigeon was found on the streets and was with this couple for a long time. And the wife brought it to me. She was probably like late 70s, and it had a kidney disease. And again, the only way I can know is the same way you know if a dog has kidney disease, like imaging, blood work, all of that good stuff. And if we don't offer, we will never diagnose, right? And it ended up after everything, I did it like I did a kidney biopsy on this pigeon and all of that. At the end, the pigeon did fine and was fine. At the very end, the wife sent me pictures of the pigeon on her husband's hand, and it was a terminal patient for cancer, the husband, and that was his companion. And I had no idea, honestly,
Oh,
thank goodness, because the pressure would be too much. But
right.
they made was basically thank you for allowing, his pet to be with him at the moment he passed. And I could never imagine, and he
Gosh,
says
that like
just
chokes
a
me up just
pigeon.
hearing the story. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's so
absolutely.
many of them. Like I have couples that decide to not have kids and they pet as their kid. I have a couple that have hamsters and that's what they do. That's what they love. And the hamsters, oh my God, from this couple, they always have heart disease. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh,
Like
oh
I know,
goodness.
I know. Yeah, and we manage them and we give them a great life. And um, and one of the things that also marked me a lot, it was during my residency. This couple came to me, probably our age, Cassie, and it was time of graduation. It was at UGA at the time, and the University of Georgia. And Americans have this, and I say this Americans, I am American too now, but in a sense, like that's not a culture in other places. Like they have the t-shirts with the picture of the kid that's graduating, right? That's very
Sure.
common here.
Yeah.
So they came with the picture of a kid, and I was like, oh, graduation time, and they came with a rabbit, just the couple. Is this my daughter's rabbit? And that rabbit had terminal dental disease. Like there's literally all the jaws were taken. It was horrible.
Oh,
And he was a young rabbit, and they were crying, saying, we've been to so many veterinarians. They were really kind. So no, in no point in time they said the veterinarians were, you know, not kind or not trying to help, but they said they didn't know what to do. And it just took me so long to find you, Jay, at the time, and bring you here. And they were crying, and I was delivering the news to them. They told me that the kid on the shirt was their daughter that had passed away from lymphoma
oh my
just a
gosh.
few months ago, and the bunny was all they had left from her.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, that was one of the pivotal moments that every time came all together. I was like, see, my colleagues were not being disrespectful. They just didn't know
Right.
what to do.
Right.
Had they know what to do at the time, the rabbit would have survived. So
Yeah.
how can I
Oh
stop that,
gosh.
right? Because I can't see all the animals in the world.
Right.
And so that was like, okay, I can teach, I can empower them, I can make this knowledge accessible because it was so hard for me to get all this knowledge. So that's one of the things. And so when we see those patients and no species left behind, we really need to stop and think like, am I treating all the pets equally?
Right.
Or do I say it's just a rabbit? It's just a hamster. And it comes a lot with a lot of myth and a lot of culture, right? Like everything does. It's structural. And no matter where you go, you'll hear the same thing, like, oh, the clients are not gonna pay for it. I'm not gonna offer an echocardiogram. There's no way. How do you know? You can measure the love a person has for an animal. Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
really
I always look at
can't.
it as like our job is to be the purveyors of information and to offer all the options, and you just never
Hmm.
know. And I think as long as you're not like, bullying people into something or pressuring them into it, like it's
Yeah.
absolutely we have to offer options. And I mean, I have to say, we got so we ended up getting fish. The tanks, each of my daughters has a
Hmm.
tank, and like they're guppy tanks. These are not, fancy
Hmm.
exotic fish or anything
Yeah.
like that.
We
I
have one of
love
those
those
here too.
fish. I love those
I
fish. And
know, it's
like
my
there's this
grandson.
albino pleco, and like he is my favorite fish in the whole world. And he comes out like even during the day and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I think he's so funny. And we just got like and we just put one in my other daughter's tank, and I have so much fun like going and seeing if he's out like before the light
Hmm.
comes on in the tank and everything.
Yes.
And so absolutely that bond
I
exists
buy I
with
buy toys for so my daughter has a beta fish too. His
yeah,
name is Martin Luther King. She named it.
I love it.
And it's against my will just because, and I let it pass because it's Martin Luther King, because all our pets have food names.
Oh
and
my
she
goodness.
dared to steer away from it. But I will forgive her because it's an important name. I'll go with
Sure.
that. But I want it to be Vanilla Sky because it's vanilla. But anyway,
Yeah.
and I buy toys for the feed. Like,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
ridiculous. Like, I go to the store to buy food for the bird. And then I see, oh my God, look at this cave and this and that. And I buy, and it's like
Yes.
ridiculous. And I go there and I say, come say hi to grandma. He comes and swims. I'm like, oh my God, it's so cute.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah,
know, it's
that's like
adorable.
I bought this little hide for when we just got this other pleco because in our now we're getting into story time here. But my one daughter, she has a common pleco who lives in a treasure box and never comes out ever. Like the only time I ever see him is when I
love it.
clean the tank, and I'm always like, "How are you alive? Like, what do you eat in there?" And
I love it.
never see him. So we were like, "Okay, like let's see if we can get a fancy pleco that's a little bit less scared of people and will come out and everything." But I got the new one a little hide because I know they're nocturnal. So I was like, "You're never getting in that treasure box, buddy. Like he will never
Yeah.
come out." And
Yeah.
I was having just this morning, like we were late getting to school. I was having so much fun watching him like swim in and out of the hide and everything. Not the pleco, but the guppies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
you just get so attached to them.
And like there are so many studies showing the other thing we do is evidence-based medicine. That's another core, like we are very into that because it's such an opinion-based like field. I feel like there's so many forums, and so Vetahead really tries not to be a forum because forums, and again, I can see the use and I can see how people
Right.
can feel supported with them, but the amount of misinformation that is spread, and again, not maliciously. It's not
Right.
malicious, but it's not helping anybody. It's just spreading
Yeah.
more misinformation. And we really try to be evidence-based. So we try to make it as easy as possible. Like if you are a Vetaheader, then you have even from like your soap sheet, like so we give you a soap, so a subjective objective assessment. By the way, the rest of the world does not work like that with soaps. It's just an American thing.
Really?
Yes, it's just an
Oh,
American thing.
who
Yeah.
knew?
So you go and when I came here, that's one of the things for to validate my diploma. I had to do a soap. I was like, I'm gonna cook. What is happening? Like,
Right?
like
Oh my
I don't know.
goodness. Oh, that's funny.
And yeah, so basically it's an anamnesis. So the questions you ask the owner, your physical exam chart, your assessment, like your differentials and your plan, right? Just so it's interesting. So we have all of that for birds, for reptiles, and we have husbandry sheets. So a lot of things like I don't want to see a hamster because I don't even know what that thing is. Don't worry, we have the husband sheet right here. You just print. It's beautiful. You just print and hand to the owner. We have all
Yeah.
of that. We have everything in our ebooks. We make medical illustrations, like to make it very easy. And all our medical illustrators are women. Very difficult
Love
breed.
that.
We really make like a one-stop shop. You go there and you find what you need easy on the ebooks. You can like do contour find, and you type a word and you can find it. So we try to make it very easy. We also try to give a lot of free information on our social medias. Of course, you can't really teach medicine on social media, but
Sure.
we try to give. And a lot of times, Cassie, I receive pictures on Instagram, like, directs with pictures of our posts printed on hospitals in India, for example. That was one that marked me a lot. I could see that the floor was not, it was like dirt, and I could see that was very precarious. It was a hospital, and they had our charts for like the common heart rates and temperatures and stuff. And it was just like, oh my God, not
You're
that
doing it. You're
access to
making a
that basic
difference.
information. Yeah. So we make it like you're seeing a parrot and you're like, what is a heart rate? I have no idea. So we have
Right.
charts with like the most common animals and their vitals, and the same thing for blood work and sedation protocols. Like I went to veg the other day with my dog because she decided to pee blood. And
Oh
I
no.
swear it just happened that day. Like I
Oh,
literally
I believe you.
It's true.
I have seen it that day. Like when people tell me that, usually I'm like, okay, I believe you. This really did happen. And also
Oh
when
my
people are
God.
like, yeah, I just let them out and they pee. I don't know. I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, me
And
too.
the dog is playing,
Same.
eating,
Yeah.
all like I know she just decided to pee on tile and we saw it. And then I took her to veg. I got there and they had our sheets printed, laminated everywhere. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Amazing. Oh, were you like a
Yes.
celebrity? Were you like,
Yeah,
I
it's
made
a little
these.
funny. That part's a little interesting. Yeah, sometimes they go like, oh, Vetahead. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh, how
hi.
cool.
It's like really cool. Yeah. So that's a part that no species left behind. We really want, and the only way, like, our colleagues are gonna really embrace it is if they have the knowledge. You fear what you don't know, right? And so
Right.
if you know, you're not gonna fear anymore, and that goes for everything.
Absolutely. And, you know, we had these core values kind of like broken out into questions here, but I feel like you did such a better job of covering them in this discussion here. So
Sorry,
I just
did I
want,
steer you on a different
nope.
place?
I loved it. I loved it. I thought, you know, it came through, you know, where these core values came from, and I'm so glad we talked about them in this way. And so I'm just going to summarize them
Uh-huh.
and see if there's anything you want to add to that to make sure that we've really rounded them out, because they're important
Hmm.
and they're really good core values. So no, number one, I have we're more alike than we are different.
Oh, yes, that's a good one.
Number two is no species left behind. They're all good ones.
Yeah.
Three is making ZooMed accessible. And
Hmm.
four is empowering veterinarians to do ZooMed. And I
Yeah.
think you've done
Yes,
an amazing job of illustrating how Vetahead does all of those things. Is there anything you want to add to those?
well, we also very sassy. We are a sassy
Love it.
brand. And it goes like to the first one, like we are more alike than we are different. And that goes a lot of our personalities. Like, and I really like that our team feels free to to use that, concept. But we have an editorial on our social media called Unpopular Opinion, and those really generate a lot of heat because they are unpopular, but it's tying to the we are more alike than we are different. So for example, just today I was giving a webinar on placing feeding tubes on chelonis, like turtles and tortoises,
Hmm.
and I start by giving a very unpopular opinion. I'm like, okay, guys, let me do this test with you, and that's not like a tricky test, but you have some exposure to exotics, right? And so if you see a reptile, and everybody can relate to this, right? So no matter what reptile, if it's a lizard, a turtle, a snake, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what disease, if they come with respiratory distress or diarrhea, it doesn't matter. We all seen and done it. An injection of ceftazidime,
Sure.
right? The antibiotic ceftazidime every 48 or 72 hours, sub-Q fluids,
Right.
right? And if you're being really brave, perhaps meloxicam.
Okay, yes. All right. So I'm had part of that where I was like, I feel like hydration is always like a big component
Yeah,
of it. And
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Like antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, absolutely.
So now, if I told you that every dog that comes through the door, I treat with ceftazidime,
Oh
sub-Q
my
fluids,
goodness.
and meloxicam.
My eye just twitched a little.
Okay, see what I'm saying? We are more alike than we are different. And I tell you, everybody, forget you're seeing a snake, a bird. Put the word dog. If it sounds crazy for a dog, it's crazy for every other animal. So, for instance, reptiles can have heart disease too. They have a heart. And if they are in congestive heart failure and you're giving fluids or giving antibiotics, how is that going to help? If anything, is going to stress them out, giving an injection, you know.
Yeah.
And then the meloxicam, if they are zotemic, because of the heart disease, which we all know is the fine balance between the kidney and the heart. And if they
Right.
are zotemic, then you're making things worse.
Yeah. I would
So,
never like consider, you know, if a dog came in and I was concerned about congestive heart failure, I'd be like, oh, we'll treat you with meloxicam. Like, well,
right. And that's what we do. Like, I
anti-inflammatory
know.
for your heart.
And that's what happens. And I also think I'm like, okay, let's assume is an infection caused by a bacteria that it's happening, right? The only antibiotic we prescribe is ceftazidime. So if I told you, okay, Cassie, so for any bacterial infection in dogs from now on, all you're gonna do is inject those ceftazidime. That's it.
Oh my goodness. Like just I was working through an infection the other day that I was
Mm-hmm.
confident was bacterial and talking to two different colleagues, and we were kind of roundtabling of like what our best coverage was for this particular dog in this scenario, and really trying there were a lot of questions to answer to feel like we were on the right track with antibiotic stewardship and our
Yeah,
selection there.
yeah, yeah. So it makes no sense. So like the other day, I was helping a team. Is an amazing, wonderful team. Okay. And it's very a fine line because while we want to be sassy, we also don't want to be judgmental. But if we
Sure.
don't raise these points as graphic as I am doing right now, it can sound judgmental. I can see that. But at the same time, if we don't make it so visual, you might not understand and you might not stop to like think critically, right? So I was
Right.
helping this amazing team, right? There was this bearded dragon with a prolapse. Well, a very mild prolapse of the cloaca. And they caught to me because it was not a typical prolapse. Like it was just like if the cloaca was really edema, it was very swollen. But nothing like there was no tissue protruding. And I said, okay, what have you guys already done? And they were like, oh, ceftazidime fluids. At the end, I had a conversation. Well, what ended up doing was this patient had eggs. So we took x-rays, right? That's what we could do in dogs and cats, like do imaging. So there were eggs, and one of the eggs was caught, it was in the very distal part of the oviduct of the uterus, and it was prolapsing. The tissue was prolapsing inside of the cloaca. So there was a prolapse, but it was from the oviduct to inside of the cloaca. And so when I broke down, so we took x-rays and we did blood work, then the veterinarian herself was like, oh, so I can just aspirate the egg. And I was like, bingo. And so she was like, oh, I can do an ultrasound like I do for cystocentesis. I said, bingo. So the moment she started thinking with her medical brain, she worked up the case herself.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then at the end, she said, well, now I'm questioning the ceftazidime. Should I even continue that? I said, what do you think? If it was a dog, she's like, no. I said, there you go. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. When we think exotics, it blocked our brain. It blocks our brain.
Right.
Okay. The last one I want to tell you, that's even worse, right? So how do you feel about anesthetizing a rabbit?
Not good. Not good. Mainly because of like the intubation scares me. I've seen those be challenging, and I'm going, okay, now do I have an anesthetized rabbit with no tube, and if I can't get the tube in, who's going to get the tube in?
Right. So you are even a step ahead, okay? Because majority of us, and I put myself into that bucket, I would mask them down, right? With ISO. I would mask it down and keep them masked down under anesthesia. And then eventually they would die. Sure. And then eventually we would be like, oh, man, rabbits, they die. I don't want to do it anymore. It's like that drenched feeling of telling the owner, the patient dies. Sometimes it's a neuter, like an elective neuter. And the young patient, like, damn it. And then you need to go there. I don't want that feeling. I thought about giving up so many times because of that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think that feeling, and I was just talking to my kids and another core value yesterday about resilience, right? I was like, how do you raise resilient kids? And I was talking to them because we went to see a play about RBG's life and how resilient that woman was.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with her story, but she had 4 cancers. Her husband had cancer. She had a kid. The whole thing, the world against her, like, sexism, you name it. But she kept going. And so resilience. And I think because of that, I didn't give up. And but I knew that what I was doing was wrong because I was losing patience. And so I had to do something different than because repeating the same thing were going to give me the same outcome. And I did not have any mentors, anyone in Brazil at the time. There was not even a practice in the city I was that would see exotic animals. So it was a lot of learning on my own. And so the only thing I could do is look to my colleagues that saw dogs and cats and see, what are you doing in these situations? So I can mimic what you're doing. And they were all intubated, right? And I was like, I need to figure out a way to intubate you. And I'm like, okay, I hear the humans are difficult to intubate. So how do they intubate humans? Oh, they use this little camera. I'm like, oh. So it's not that I am not good at it. It's just that I need a different equipment. It's like if I give you a spoon and tell you to go auscultate a dog. Like, you're not going to be able to do it.
Not with the spoon, like maybe with like leaning my ear against there and like throwing the spoon away.
But then let's say you lean your ear, that is only so much you're going to be able to hear. You're going to miss a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing. You just need a little camera. I'm not even talking about a fancy thing. You can buy cameras off Amazon for $30, cameras that you use to clean ears of humans, that you can use those to intubate. I'm not talking fancy. I'm talking you just need the correct equipment to be able to do your job, right? So that's another like unpopular opinion. Every time we post about it, people get very, very passionate about it. But I tell them, rabbits don't die under anesthesia. We kill them.
Sure.
And
goes
it's
back
true.
To, like
it
I
is
said,
harsh.
I went to University of Florida, and that was part of the time was in anesthesia, and so hence lots of rabbit intubations. And not that I was doing, but it goes back to the no safe anesthesia, but safe anesthetists. And so I think, you proved to yourself in that moment, like that was not a decision a safe anesthetist was making. And so how could you be a safer anesthetist in that moment? And you found a way.
Yeah, because we know ISO, independent of the species, doesn't matter. It's time dependent, it's hypotensive. We know that. We know time dependent and also dose dependent is can cause apnea, it's gonna cause hypoventilation. We know it's a fact. It's not like something that it will happen. It will happen. It's time dependent. So when we mask down a rabbit, we're not ventilating. Not to mention that we put in the rabbit on his back and it has a huge GI, a small thorax, so all that pressure in the diaphragm. And then we mask it down when we do laparotomies, like we open the abdomen, like it's a major surgery.
Right.
And we're not ventilating that patient. We're not monitoring tidal CO2, and which is another privilege, by the way. That's really expensive equipment.
Yeah,
there are other companies now coming to the market. I just bought a tidal CO2 off of Amazon for $260.
What?
And it
you
works
have
great.
To send me that link.
Yeah, it's the Asian company trying to enter the American market. But anyway, and I share all of this with the Vetaheaders. Like I make no money with these companies, but it's like empowering them. But anyway, so we have the rabbit there, and like in a mark of 40 minutes or so, the rabbit suddenly dies, right? And we are not measuring the blood pressure. We are not, we don't have this patient sometimes on fluids, and definitely not ventilating this patient. We're just seeing him breathe, but breathing does not equal good ventilation. And so we are so surprised when it happens. Well, if it, like this exercise, if I told you, hey, Cassie, I want you to spay my dog, but please do not intubate because I think it's very risky and difficult. I just want you to mask my dog down. Would you do it?
No. Oh my goodness.
And if my dog died,
and if I was ever in that situation, I'd be like, I'd be freaking out the whole time of like, this is not okay. This dog's gonna die.
Right, but then I will own the part of the problem too. People like me, specialists, not everybody, okay, but many specialists in ZooMed, they hoard their knowledge because it makes us feel special, right? So instead of going and saying, Cassie, it happened, talk to me, work through me with this, how would you do in the dog? I'll do this and this and that. And like, Cassie, you can intubate. It's easy. It's a different technique. I guarantee you do way more difficult things with dogs and cats than intubating a rabbit. I promise you. Like people with doctors' cats do things that I'm like, I can't do that. Like they're tapping chest and tapping this and tapping that. I'm like, oh, okay. This sounds intense. But if I just walk you through it.
Let's do it. We can. I will say I spent a long time being very scared of tapping chest, and it still gives me like pause for sure. But it seems scarier to intubate a rabbit to me.
Right, because you have never done it, because people like me go like, you need this fancy equipment that costs $10,000 and you need this and you need that and then it's going to die if you don't do this. And blah. It's like, no, that's not it. So anyway, that's, I think, and we have now this editorial too. We are more alike than we're different. And then we put dog cases where we show it will have been the same thing with a rabbit. That's exactly how you work up this case if it was a rabbit. There's no magical, like, if a rabbit is painting, this is the diagnosis. No, that rabbit's painting, that's it, period. You need to work up a case like you would do with any other.
A respiratory case, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And now I feel like, when you're saying, and specialists telling us, oh, we have to have this equipment and stuff, I feel like now we're headed down the road of like spectrum of care, and now we need another hour to continue that conversation because there's so much to it. And gosh, I think there's so many cases
for
that
that
we could break
really
down.
No, for that really, I think, and I'm not trying to sell Vetahead, but at the same time,
no, but it's a
lot more knowledge that the person needs. It's not just a conversation. So like, to get all this knowledge, really, that's why we came up with the online courses, because then now that you are aware, now you can learn how to do it. And the standard of care is exactly the same you do for dogs and cats. No more, no less, right? So you already know all of it. And when you take our courses, perhaps at the end you will be like, I feel like I already knew all of that. I just haven't thought that.
Like, I think you're doing a great job of, showing how, Vetahead as a resource is really there to empower people like me, general practitioners who love all creatures, great and small. But yes, there is a lot of fear associated with seeing species that I don't have a familiarity with and I don't have a comfort level with. And so, you know, having that information available and having someone like you be able to walk me through these cases and say, do you see how it's so similar? Like, here's what is common in this species and this species, and just having that information there, it seems very empowering for us as practitioners. And then also, like you said, so much better for the animals, because then we're not stumbling going, I mean, I'll help you with what I can, but I don't really see this species and I don't really know what to do.
Which is me with dogs, which is funny.
Oh, well, you call me like with the dog stuff. I'm happy. I'm
I do
I'm no
call
specialist,
my friends.
but I'm happy to weigh in on dogs all day.
I do call my friends.
Good. Yeah. And because we're all here to help each other, right?
Yes. And that's why the Vetahead community. So we also have Vetahead community now, where is a place where you can, it's not a forum, but it's different. So we have the Essentials membership, which is all online courses. And then we have the community. It came from literally this. It came naturally. The Vetaheads asked for it. It's like, okay, I see all this, but I want to be able to connect. I want to be able to call a friend. I want to be able to share. And sometimes not even asking for medical advice. It's like sharing, I'm having difficulties with this. I'm having a difficult climate. I'm having this, and the ability to do this and the ability to ask more questions. It's literally like I'm calling a friend, I'm talking.
Right.
And so that became the Vetahead community, which is very, very organic. And the Vetaheaders, like on the community, they spread the word. The word is like so beautiful to see. Like, I love it. And they build the content too. It's like, because everybody can post and everybody can do, and I'm there to monitor. I'm like there to guide, but it's a lot of it. The community is the people in it, right? And so it's beautiful. I love it.
Well, I've had so much fun talking to you. We've covered, oh my gosh, we've covered so much, and there's still so much more there to talk about. But
thank you for this space.
Oh my gosh, thank you for joining me. And I hope we can do it again. Maybe one of these days we can talk about, break down some cases or something like that, because even just in those short examples, I think it was really eye-opening to say, yeah, just look for the similarities and then, understand the nuances about that specific species, and you're there. And
I do want to shout out to VetFolio though. And I know it might sound like, it's not genuine, but it is. VetFolio saw this niche and believed a Vetahead. And, kind of in the beginning, we're still a young company, and opened this space to us to be a VetFolio. So there is some content of Vetahead at VetFolio. VetFolio, I don't need to tell you, is a renown. To me, having the Vetahead name of the VetFolio is just surreal. You need to understand, VetFolio to me, coming from Brazil, it's like Beyonce saying your name on a song.
My goodness.
You know what I mean? It's where we learn from is so far away, and now we are there. No, something that came out of my head is there. And so VetFolio saw this. We get a lot of no's, Cassie, a lot of no's, because people go oh, that's really not a priority. And I'm animals are not a priority. But VetFolio was no, let's try. This is new to us. And they were very kind, very compassionate. This is new to us. We want to try. Let's do this. Let's do a trial. And now we are renewing our partnership contract. And they are we want more, because it was so successful. It was so looked for, all the webinars, and so well attended. And so it takes courage, right? In a corporation, corporations tend to be lack creativity and lack empathy. It's just the way it is. Not, it's just you grow too much or have too many people. So shout out to VetFolio, because you believed in us, and not because of us, but because you believed there was a need in the market. There was a need for the animals. At the end of the day, I think the core values of all of us is help the animals, and you believed in us, and it grew to a beautiful partnership. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh my goodness. And that's so kind of you to say. I wish I could take credit for any of that. And so I'm going to pass that shout out and give a shout out to the team here, because I love getting on here and having the conversations and being able to, and don't get me wrong, I'm involved behind the scenes, not just, up here being the face and having the conversations, but That's so kind of you to say, because we really are a very small team, and the vision is there, and they're so in a small team, but everybody is just like that go-getter of like exactly what you said, like how can we help the animals? So I really appreciate the shout out, because there's a lot of heart and a lot of passion that goes into everything we do on VetFolio.
Yes, it's palpable.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, Lyla, if we don't stop having this conversation, we're going to sit here until like tomorrow and keep talking. So
yes,
I'm truly, if you're open for it, I would love to do this again sometime. You're a great conversation and have so many thoughts on everything that I would love to continue to pick your brain.
Absolutely, it would be a pleasure.
Well, thank you for joining me for this episode. I hope everybody out there enjoys it as much as I did. I hope you did too. This was a great conversation.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that like I did and felt like you could have sat there for another hour listening to Dr. Proença speak, because, gosh, she has such an interesting perspective and an interesting story. So, Dr. Proença, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, please be sure to check out Vetahead. I have been on there myself, and it is just a goldmine of information when it comes to zoological animals. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It'll help other veterinary professionals like you find this and other great content we try to put out there. For more episodes like this, click on the Education tab on the VetFolio website. As always, we'd love to hear your input on this talk, as well as ideas for topics you'd like to hear from us in the future. Feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. You can also visit my Facebook page at Dr. Cassi DVM, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.